Hey guys, John here with a quick look at Uncharted 4's pre-alpha multiplayer. There are some pretty cool things here to glean from this bit of footage, so we thought we'd give it a quick look. Everything here is still pre-alpha and is likely to improve by release, but with that in mind, let's go ahead and dive in. First, we're given some nice flybys showcasing two maps from the game. The jungle area here shows some nice lighting and effects work that really caught our eye. This particular shot demonstrates some nice bounce lighting as well, suggesting some sort of global illumination system. As the camera moves forward, we see the exposure adjusted to reveal a depth of field shrouded background. From what we can tell, shadow quality is also pretty good for a 60 frames per second multiplayer game, though of course there are still some exceptions as we'll see momentarily. We appreciate the sheer amount of movement present in each scene. Trees blowing in the wind, insects buzzing around, particles filling the air. There's just a lot of potential here for building atmosphere, and it really looks cool in motion. Naughty Dog's high dynamic range implementation also produces some pretty nice results for sure, but what we really like are the full volumetric light shafts visible in the game. Even when the sun is occluded from screen space, we still see light volumes filling the world. Then we move over to a very different looking map, in town here. Now as the camera moves around, we still see plenty of animated meshes throughout the world. The level of detail pop-in throughout these scenes actually seems to be somewhat minimal here. The view from this window really showcases the effect the lighting model has on atmospheric rendering. The sunlight appears to have real volume here. The way it plays off of foliage and structures is superb as well. Next, if you look at the statue in this shot, we actually do see some lower resolution shadow artifacts. The police car also lacks proper ambient occlusion and kind of just floats there. Alright, now let's jump into the action here. We basically have a dramatic cut-up of gameplay showcasing new abilities and such, but we decided to take it and run it through our frame rate analysis tool. The results from that are, well, rather interesting. Let's go ahead and enable the frame rate graph now. Okay, don't be shocked just yet. Yes, the frame rate on display in this early footage is not very consistent at all, to say the least. But the version of Uncharted 4 that was playable on the show floor at Paris Games Week actually turns in a more consistent 60 frames per second than what we're seeing right here. Yeah, there's still dips below 50 frames per second in the playable build, but it was a lot more consistent than this. So why look at pre-release media under a microscope then? We like to think of it like a milestone. We have a look at an early build here, which Naughty Dog saw fit to release in trailer form, but it's already been improved upon for this week's show. It's not hard to imagine the beta and final game running much better than this. Optimization generally occurs late in the development process after all, so we'll remain hopeful. Alright, enough about that. The gameplay segment also shows some nice effects worth mentioning. One of the first things that really stands out here is the great use of object motion blur. The shutter speed has been adjusted to produce beautiful results at a higher frame rate here, unlike The Last of Us Remastered. It looks extremely fluid in motion, even in this case where the frame rate is dipping. What this section really demonstrates quite well is the sheer volume of particle effects in play. Explosions, smoke clouds, debris, and more are all animated rather beautifully. This is coupled with a wealth of dynamic lights used to represent the muzzle flash produced by each weapon, and there's also a distortion blur used in conjunction with the bizarre artifact power-ups. There are also some really nice examples of physics showing up even in the multiplayer mode. Notice the band on the end of the rifle as it flips around here, or this flower pot tumbling from the table. Even while moving around, the rope used for navigation looks fantastic. But we also like the way it bobs around on the player realistically as the character model moves about. Alright, so that's just some quick impressions on what we're seeing thus far. The decision to target 900p at 60 frames per second is kind of a brave one, and it's sure to leave some folks disappointed, but ultimately, we think it's a pretty good choice for the multiplayer experience. After all, delivering 900p at 60 frames per second is actually more demanding on the GPU than 1080p 30, so it's impressive that the team is sticking to that original promise. Of course, the single-player portion would benefit as well, but it's clear that simply dropping the resolution to 900p just wouldn't be enough to pull it off with everything else Naughty Dog is doing here. Alright, so that's all for now, but expect some additional video content when the beta rolls around this December. We'll be able to present something a little more definitive. But of course, if you enjoyed this video, feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Until next time, this is John, signing off.